for the Université Côte d'Azur, donc Nice, Management School of University. And so we are talking about pandemics and international tourist destinations, resilience strategies. Okay. So research issues. Some territories base a significant part of their attractiveness and competitiveness in the tourism sector on events and congresses. Also called that MICE tourism. That means meeting, incentive, congress, exhibition, or events. The negative impact of Corona on the event tourism industry, including MICE tourism, is extremely important, linked to the massive restrictions on tourist mobility. So, what adaptation measures and resilience strategies have destinations been able to put in place? Does this pandemic open the way to new fields of experience, to different ways of considering conference location? For that, I use different kinds of methods, some mixed methods. First, of course, review of scientific, but also operational literature, like marketing mix, for example, report, etc. Implementation of an information and strategic watch on destinations and the international congress sector. Use of statistical data and surveys of key public and private convention stakeholders in 9 global metropolitan tourism destinations in Europe, North America, and Asia. So, general background. Before the pandemic, as you know, tourism accounted for 10% of global GDP and 1.5 billion international arrivals. In the same year, the Congress tourism sector was valued at $805 billion. For the first quarter of 2020 until the summer of 2021, or even now, depending on the country, traffic and MICE events have been blocked, prohibited, or drastically restricted, leading to considerable reductions in congressional mobility. The continents most affected are Europe and Asia. We can see on this graph from the World Tourism Organization the fall, the drop, in tourist international arrivals and the potential rebound scenarios. And now we can observe that at the end of October 2021, from the 20th of October 2021, event restrictions are still very much in place around the world. General background. So this presentation in 2 parts. First, conference tourism and the coronavirus crisis, theoretical approach. Then part 2, research and discussion, adaptation measures and resilience strategies for destinations, the future of mobility and location in MICE tourism. Part 1, so theoretical approach, system and interfaces. What is system, particularly in geographical sciences? I am a geographer. So a system is an entity that is autonomous from its environment, organized in a stable structure that can be identified over time, made up of interdependent elements whose interactions help to maintain the structure of the system and make it evolve. So, interfaces. We consider the contact between 2 systems as an interface. The Congress here provides an interface between 2 sets of systems, a functional metasystem and a territorial metasystem. We use here, of course, a simplified version of the interfacic system approach. 3 points. First, the tourist event is a link between the event system and the tourism system. In fact, not all events are tourism events, and not all tourism activities are events, of course. Second, the face-to-face congress takes place on a surface support, I call the host city. Ponta Delgada. So the Congress interface is a link between the different localized systems, territories, at different scales, of course, via tourist mobility. So the interfaces connects place of origin of the delegates, place of the Congress, but at the same time excludes others, place not selected to host a Congress. Third, this interface plays a key regulatory role. It captures, filters, transforms, and directs the multiple exchanges. Can be communicational, informational, economic, cultural, societal, etc., between Congress tourists and the host territories. So this is a scheme about the network territory interfaces in the Congress tourism system and the main impact. So we can see the territory is a frame, first frame, and then the different kind of stakeholders. It's a simplified, very simplified scheme. And so we can see that there are different kinds of effects, of course. The major efforts of this interface are, as it can be, urbanistic, architectural, for example, with the building, the construction of convention centers in the city, of course. Communicational, media, political, geopolitical events, etc. All these efforts can be, of course, direct or induced. So now, a few words about the convention tourism and the main locations. So the table on the right shows the global hierarchy of conference cities. We can see that some 20 cities alone host almost half of the total numbers of international congresses held annually in the world, in the entire world. So we can say that is a very strong geographical polarization. So with this map of the main location, we can see two major geographical poles stand out. On the one hand, this is the Western and particularly the European pole. It is the traditionally receiver of congresses based on capitals, first and foremost, for example, Brussels, Paris, London, or Vienna, and two metropolises, Barcelona and Geneva. On the other hand, the Asia-Pacific pole. This Asia-Pacific pole is much more recent, except Tokyo. This pole is very, very dynamic at different scales. For example, Singapore, Seoul, and Bangkok are very active. We can note that we have also two tourist metropoles, Sydney in Australia and Busan in South Korea. We will now analyze the vectors linking pandemic crisis, mobility, and Congress location. So, first part, complexity of the crisis. The corona crisis, because of its unpredictability and scale and the complexity of the chain of iteration it generates, has economic, political, and social effects beyond the health crisis. Yet, tourism crises are rarely analyzed with this complexity in mind. International cities, capitals, and metropolises are complex adaptive territorial systems, and they are all intertwined. All these global conference destinations are embedded in multiple intra-network, inter-network, and network territory dynamics at different scales. So, crisis management and strategies are put in place in a context of globalization and fierce competition between cities to host international conferences. Indeed, beyond the economic aspect, which are important, of course, but Congress tourism is a strategic vector of territorial development. It is an indicator often chosen in world ranking as a sign of high-level metropolitan vitality and attractiveness. Second, the main impacts of the corona on conference tourism. Like all tourist mobility, Congress-related travel is sensitive to crisis, economy, geopolitical crisis, etc. The particularity of the COVID-19 pandemic lies in the global scale of the crisis, its scope and duration. The impacts are multiple. The entire industry is affected, transport, accommodation, etc. So, tourism and Congress destination, and all the stakeholders, of course, inside, face major problems, sometimes survival problems, in maintaining their image, influence, and trust between stakeholders. A question arises as the resilience of international Congress destination. We consider here resilience as the response to change due to different types of trauma, not simply in an adaptive, passive way, but through a reaction by implementing a regenerative response as a territory. Two major points can be mentioned now: the complexity of the crisis and the effects on tourism behavior, adaptation measures, and resilience of places. So, implication for the behavior of conference planners and tourists, Congress tourists, of course. So, the image of tourist destination can change negatively as a result of the crisis. This negative impact affects some destinations more than others. Two situations can result from this: a degraded image in the face of frightened conference planners and tourists who are not reassured by the decision taken. The attractiveness of the destination declines in that case. Conference mobility is shifting to other locations. Or an image maintained thanks to the attitude of stakeholders willing to support the economy of the destination. Conference mobility, in that case, remain or return to these venues after the pandemic crisis episode. Tourists now, they tend to become more risk-averse in terms of travel when exposed to a disease or threat. Pathogen threats make tourists more vigilant and avoid crowding, especially large gatherings you can imagine at international Congress-type event, which can have more than 10,000 people in the same room. So, adaptation, measure, and resilience of places. The main stakeholders of a local Congress system are destination management organization, local authorities, tourism, and Congress professionals. So we know that innovation capacities play a role in crisis. Tourism organizations often suffer from a lack of innovation. The flexibility of destinations is put to the test during this earth crisis. Reactive versus proactive strategies. Oh, I think I have to cancel. I have to cancel. Yeah. No, because I have no. There was an image on the screen. No problem. Okay. So long-term effect of different scales at different scales. So governments seek to preserve the existing economic system through financial support and regulations, which differ from country to country. Continuity or change scenario. Destination implement crisis management strategies while waiting for a rebound in demand and a return to some normality, 2022, 2023, etc., etc. Or paradigm shift. Due to the external shock, traditional Congress destination may be shaken, leading to market opportunities for new companies or destinations, rethinking Congress tourism locations. It's a question. So now the second part with the survey. In order to understand the crisis management strategies of major destinations, an international survey was carried out. The panel of destinations selected reflects the Congress destination network. One North American city, Montreal, two Asian capitals, one of which has been on the rise for the past 10 years, Seoul, and one that has very recently emerged in the top 20, Bangkok, and European cities with different trajectories. London and Paris, the great traditional convention cities, Berlin, Stockholm, and Prague, and the growing southern capital, Lisbon. So, a survey. We can see several groups of questions. They are grouped around different types. The impact of the crisis, the strategy put in place, the estimated level of resilience of the destination, and the future of the event sector. So, this survey was conducted from October 2020 to May 2021. First of all, there are lots of difficulties encountered during the survey. Because of invalid email addresses, the email goes into the spam folder, partial unemployment during this period, privacy policy, etc., etc., etc. But we have got about 50 responses and 45 entirely usable responses from managers of convention bureaus, congress center, conference authors, etc. And 9 international destinations: Bangkok, Berlin, Lisbon, Montreal, London, Paris, Prague, Seoul, and Stockholm. Well, the main results and discussion now. First, main impact of Congress mobilities. We can see that the majority of respondents recorded high rates of cancellations and postponement of events in their destination. And now, the main crisis management strategies and policy put in place by the destination, by the managers of this destination. So, first of all, we have right of hybridization measures. So, what is it? You know that the digitalization of even a hybrid solution. When I'm talking about a virtual meeting, that means that the entire conference is held online. And hybrid meeting means that a part of the audience is in the room in face-to-face mode, and part of the audience is online. That is what we are experiencing today with half of the participants in the workshop here in Ponta Delgada, and some located in different parts of the world. This is a hybrid solution. So, we can see that there are different kinds of policies, the main policy put in place. First, a classical, I can tell it, pricing policy with flexible pricing. A second word, promotion and communication policy. So promote and highlight the strength of the destination, particularly on the social networks, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Websites and via direct mail promote health protocols and distance and hybrid events. Then certification and labeling around strict health protocols and procedures. Search for labeling, AFNOR certification, safe travels, etc. And the most important policy, hybridization measures. Invest in the powerful Wi-Fi web connection, of course, to carry out hybrid of distant events. And also invest in technological equipment, sometimes very heavy equipment, camera, microphone, but also studios, recording studios, etc., big ones, to carry out hybrid events. So now I've chosen to highlight 3 cases, illustrating the 3 main types of strategies put in place by destination stakeholders in the 9 metropolises, from the most reactive to the most proactive. First of all, Bangkok. In fact, Bangkok reacted as it went along, without any overall strategy except a wait-and-see attitude. So few distance and hybrid events at the beginning, because the measures put in place by the government have been more flexible than in other countries. For example, no limits on participants between June 2020 and mid-October 2020. Since the beginning of 2021, several conference hotels and now convention centers have offered a hybrid solution. Paris now. Paris has adopted relying on heavy equipment and quality services, which takes time. So the current global context has led event organizers to develop alternative solutions to maintain sharing and meeting during events. They have been able to innovate and test new devices for hybrid or digital event. Recording studios, big one, eh? Big ones. So Berlin, but Berlin was ahead of the other destinations thanks to its proactive strategy and its lead in managing digital and hybrid solutions. Berlin is one of the destinations that is comfortable with this crisis because this city offered, before the pandemics, hybrid and virtual events. Now, estimate the level of resilience of Congress destination by themselves. We can see that more than 70% of stakeholders are optimistic, estimating their city's level of resilience to be medium to high and a rebound in Congress mobility, benefiting their destination soon. For example, Stockholm, London, Montreal, Bangkok, etc. Some destinations are less optimistic. For example, Paris is considering a longer-term rebound in face of 2024 Olympic Games. So the future of the event sector. First, the graph about the estimated time to overcome the health crisis and its consequences. A majority of destinations think that it will be overcome more than 3 years. So the main changes expected by stakeholders in the sector. For hotels and congress center, this sector is saved by new technology, implementation of newer standards and hybrid events, and return of the face-to-face event, but with incorporation of the virtual. For tourist office and convention bureau, they are evolving and quickly evolving and redefining their services. Increases importance of digital, increased use of social network, even influencers, staff training and marketing creativity. To finish the future of the event sector, the key strengths, we can see robustness and flexibility of the world major destination, combining variety, network efforts, and interaction between the various stakeholders in the event tourism system cooperation. The heart of the Congress system, meeting fundamental human needs, presence, exchange, social link, moments of conviviality. And the key opportunity now, pre-pandemic trend, Congresses were becoming more and more important in terms of numbers, hence the gigantism of the facilities. Consequence, overpopularization of Congress location and exclusion of less equipped destination. With the exponential growth of hybrid events, there is an opportunity to increase the size of events more easily with virtual participants, which can open up Congress tourism to new destinations without the construction of huge facilities. The main post-COVID changes envisaged: face-to-face meeting will return, but with the need to incorporate a virtual element, post-pandemic mobility and localization potential different from pre-pandemic ones, with the opening of the panel of a destination. General conclusion now. The corona pandemic is a major crisis that is disrupting tourist mobility and questioning the traditional locations of international congresses. A major consequence is the multiplication of virtual and hybrid events. According to Fabry and Zegni, the main challenge for destinations is to become robust enough to withstand disruptions and flexible enough to recover or redevelop, reinvent themselves, thus contributing to their resilience. This implies a more evolutionary perspective, considering and managing tourism destinations as complex adaptive systems. We have seen that the world's destinations are generally confident in their capacity of resilience. So, post-COVID, towards a paradigm shift for the Congress sector, sustainable adoption of hybrid events that strengthen traditional Congress destination and facilitate the arrival of new destination. A reinvention of destination toward more innovation, creativity, and experimentation. The health crisis could then be seen as an accelerator and revealer of event concepts. Finally, in view of the increasingly close links and interactions between different geographical systems on a global scale, the potential of other major crises should not be overlooked. There are avenues open to researchers and destination stakeholders for reflection and the integration of a preventive ethic based on the tools of resilience, adaptation, and anticipatory reconstruction. Thank you for your attention.